All right, here we go. All right, ready, little towels? Let's do our recap. Hello, folks. My name is Grant Smith Ellis. It is just past 4 p.m. Eastern on September the 2nd, 2025. And there was a lot going on today, but not in the Donna Adelson trial. That trial ended with just half a day of testimony because the defense ran out of witnesses. We will resume testimony in that case tomorrow. But the news of the day in Massachusetts is that Shannon O'Brien is returning as chair of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission forthwith, ladies and gentlemen. You can see Shannon O'Brien and her lawyers, Max Stern, William Gildea, and others walking out of court last week after making arguments seeking to have O'Brien reinstated after a 2-year absence to the position of chair of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the ruling, all 50 pages of it, came down in a shock moment after noon Eastern today on Tuesday, September 2nd, and without delay, Shannon O'Brien will now be returning, thanks in part to the oral arguments of that man, William Gildea, and the written arguments of that man, Max Stern, to the position of chair of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. Now, Judge Gordon's order, which we will take a look at right here, little towels. Let's put Chair O'Brien. You may now call her Chair O'Brien, ladies and gentlemen. Let's put Chair O'Brien. There is Chair O'Brien. We'll put her back up on the screen. Chair O'Brien is now back at the Cannabis Control Commission, and let me show you why she is back, ladies and gentlemen. It was because of a decision from Judge Robert B. Gordon of the Suffolk Superior Court. You're going to see that decision up on your screen right now, and let me just tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the judge's decision, it was not good for Treasurer Goldberg. Not in any sense of the term, ladies and gentlemen, in no senses of the term. Judge Gordon ordered and made findings of fact that Treasurer Goldberg's decision to suspend Shannon O'Brien was not based on the factors listed out in state law for removal for cause, and that Treasurer Goldberg made a plain error of law attempting to read the removal provision related to inability to fulfill the functions of office, which is basically a corollary to the 25th Amendment, misread it, and tried to use that as an excuse to remove O'Brien. Judge Gordon found, and Judge Gordon was brutal in his ruling towards Judge Goldberg, and you could tell leading up to the end of the ruling a bombshell was coming, because Judge Gordon was making cooking metaphors and comparing Goldberg's arguments for dismissing O'Brien to thin gruel. Judge Gordon invoked Dickensian language about the perils of this sort of house of cards that Goldberg tried to build to justify the removal of O'Brien. And why? Because O'Brien was trying to change the very things that were occurring within the CCC: nepotism, conflicts of interest, cover-up of abuse, testing lab fraud, and otherwise, that apparently upset some members of CCC staff and fellow commissioners who were close to O'Brien's appointing authority, Treasurer Goldberg. And ladies and gentlemen, Judge Gordon also found that it was former Commissioner Nerys Camargo who may have had some kind of motive because of remarks by former Chair Steve Hoffman to the Treasurer to try to take out O'Brien so that Camargo could be chair. And we find in this decision, folks, a complete redemption for Shannon O'Brien. We find a complete redemption for Little Towel, who was banned when all of this went down from going to CCC press conferences. Why? Because some of the commissioners wanted Little Towel to go to those press conferences and ask O'Brien questions that were setups, and I didn't realize that. I've since apologized in public. And when I figured out what was going on and started asking tough questions about the people who were trying to take O'Brien out, they banned me. They released an official governmental promulgation smearing me. And I'll tell you, Little Towels, I was in the decision. Little Towel was in this decision. I'll tell you what right now. It was on like page 31 or page 30 to be specific. I was referred to by a justice of the Superior Court as a journalist. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Towel, we love you, and you are a journalist. Well, the CCC tried to say I wasn't a journalist, and now a justice of the Superior Court, upon review of this factual record, has said I am a journalist. Look at it, Mary Alice. I'm a journalist. How do you like it? How do you like them apples, CCC Communications Department? 3 years later, and I have been vindicated by a justice of the Superior Court, and I'm now flexing on you in my recap. Mary Alice, go eat your heart out. I'm a little towel. She's the head of the Communications Department. Anyway, my point is, they smeared me via an official governmental promulgation. I now am labeled a journalist by a justice of the Superior Court reviewing this factual record, and if that wasn't bad enough, you could tell that this was going to be bad, because the judge didn't just order O'Brien reinstated with back pay and back benefits. No, the judge banned Goldberg from pursuing a stay and attempting to appeal his order. Ladies and gentlemen, this is incredible. Look at this footnote here, footnote 50. Shannon O'Brien, take your victory lap. This is the greatest footnote I've ever read in any decision ever. It is the judge basically saying, and I will read from it verbatim, there will be no stay from this court of O'Brien's reinstatement to CCC leadership. And the footnote really starts up on page 49. It's footnote 50. Ordinarily, the court reserves judgment on whether to issue a stay of judgment pending appeal until a party has moved therefor. In this case, however, the interests of justice compelled the court to address the futility of such a motion without delay. A litigant seeking a stay pending appeal must demonstrate, then he lists out the factors, and then it basically says, as to the case of Barr, as the case of Barr does not present as a close one, the court does not foresee that the treasurer is reasonably likely to succeed on the merits of an appeal. Prong 1, gone. Then it says, as to the second prong, the court acknowledges that restoring O'Brien as chair may cause some short-term disruption to the operations of the CCC. Such transitional harm to the CCC, however, pales in comparison to the more substantial harm to O'Brien and the public that would result from further delay. O'Brien has not actively served as the CCC chair for 2 years while this Dickensian drama played out. We just watched the Dickens movie the other day. And while monetary damages may compensate O'Brien for lost salary and benefits, she is irreparably harmed each day she is deprived of the ability to exercise the powers of the chair for the duration of her term of appointment. Moreover, the public would be irreparably harmed if, regardless of the invalidity of a commissioner's removal, the law nonetheless permitted the appointing authorities simply to run out the clock on the commissioner's term and thereby deprive the public of the independent leadership central to the CCC's design. There will be no stay from this court of O'Brien's reinstatement to CCC leadership. And look, the judge underlined it. Look at this. Plaintiff shall be reinstated to her position as chair of the CCC effective immediately and without further delay. That means right now. I'm emailing them and being like, let me back into the press conferences. She's the chair. I can go back now. God bless the United States of America. She's the chair right now. No stay, nothing. Go pursue your futile 211.3 interlocutory appeal. It's going to get denied. Don't even bother, Goldberg. It's not worth it. I'm sorry, John Hitt, you were put in an untenable position at the Attorney General's office. This was a tough case. You were never going to win. No interlocutory appeal. There will be no stay, and she's back in her job. God bless the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Grant Smith Ellis. I'll show you the statement from O'Brien. It was released a little bit after the ruling came down. So I'll bring that up for you right now, and then we'll get out of here for the day, as I am a tired little towel. So here's the statement in full from Shannon O'Brien after her reinstatement to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. Certainly a day of celebration, certainly a day of shock. The statement is, in a 50-page decision issued today, O'Brien v. Goldberg, Superior Court Judge Robert Gordon vacated Treasurer Goldberg's decision to terminate Shannon O'Brien and ruled that Shannon O'Brien must be immediately returned to her position as chair of the Cannabis Control Commission, CCC, and further awarded O'Brien back pay and back benefits. Judge Gordon held that the case against O'Brien was built on a house of cards and blinkered reasoning. In his ruling, Judge Gordon stated that the Treasurer's conclusions that O'Brien committed gross misconduct, quote, must be viewed in its totality rather than episodic isolation. The Treasurer thus argues that individual bricks of misconduct can together build a wall of misconduct. But to extend this metaphor with an homage to the courtroom of cinema, the treasurer's grounds for misconduct may look like bricks in shape and edges and surface appearance. But viewed from any other perspective than the treasurer's, these bricks are as thin as playing cards. Resting on walls constructed of the same, the treasurer's case for gross misconduct against O'Brien turned out to be just that, a house of cards. Judge Gordon also stated that, shorn of rhetoric and hyperbole, the treasurer's decision attempts to stretch a modest number of unexceptional facts into a Procrustean bed of gross misconduct. The record in this case does not remotely suffice. The treasurer's decision removing O'Brien was not supported by substantial evidence and reflects material errors of law that are apparent on the record. Specific to the allegations that O'Brien made racially insensitive comments, Judge Gordon stated the treasurer disregarded unrefuted and critically contextualizing evidence, and there is no evidence whatsoever and no finding by the treasurer that O'Brien ever exhibited racial animus in her remarks, much less in her decision-making. Judge Gordon stated, to the contrary, the undisputed evidence is that O'Brien was fully committed to the CCC social equity mission. Indeed, O'Brien's most notorious offense in this regard, her reference to persons of Asian national origin as yellow, occurred while she was advocating for greater efforts to advance the CCC's social equity mission. Notably, the court stated that there was no finding or evidence that O'Brien uttered the term with any racial animus or hostility either towards a specific individual or towards Asian Americans collectively. Regarding the treasurer's other argument for removal, that O'Brien was unable to discharge her duties of office, Judge Gordon ruled that the treasurer's analysis, ignoring the 25th Amendment altogether, reflects the very type of blinkered reasoning that our appellate courts have repeatedly denounced, and the treasurer's interpretation of MGL Section 76D3 does not comport with any fair reading of the statute, and therefore constituted a clear error of law. When Treasurer Goldberg first approached Shannon O'Brien about becoming chair of the CCC, Goldberg directed O'Brien to clean up the mess at the CCC. O'Brien's past history as state treasurer in identifying and cleaning up the scandal in the State Lottery Commission in 1999, and then blowing the whistle on the big dig cost overruns in 2001, was evidence of her prior record as a dedicated and honest public official. Her work as chair of the CCC has been focused on fixing the management problems of the agency, bringing opportunities to people of color and women in the cannabis industry, and restoring the integrity to the CCC for the benefit of the taxpayers. Acknowledging the challenges of that mission, given the recent reports by the State Inspector General and State Auditor, Chair O'Brien is pleased to have her good name restored and looks forward to working with CCC Executive Director Travis Ahern and her fellow CCC Commissioners in fulfilling the intent of the legislature when it created the CCC. God bless her, ladies and gentlemen. She deserves it. That's a statement that the world deserves to hear. Yes, Shannon O'Brien has been vindicated. Towel has over 5.5 thousand views on Towel X. We beat out almost every other stream except for Reuters at one point when they were broadcasting the president. And we may as well be an international wire service. Yes, someone tell reporter Towel Buck we are going places. All right, my name's Grant Smith Ellis. You can catch more. Shannon O'Brien's back as the chair of the CCC. It's a new day in Massachusetts, and I'm a little towel. Catch more, youtube.com/@GrantSmithEllis, x.com Grant Smith Ellis, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, @Grant Smith Ellis. You'll be able to find me. More coverage of the Donna Adelson case tomorrow. I'm ending this recap now. God bless America. God bless Shannon O'Brien. It's over, at least that part, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying the consequences for the people who did bad things are over. That's probably not over. But it's over as to Shannon O'Brien returning. God bless America, 3-year saga. I can't tell you how much of my life I dedicated to that godforsaken case. It's over. It's a new day in Massachusetts. God bless America. Thank you very much again for watching this recap. Looking forward to talking to you again in the future. And my name is Grant Smith Ellis. I'm a towel. All right, little towels. I have a headache. I need to get some rest. Yes, bunny towel. I'm excited.